Welcome to the place where we learn about and learn from the leaders in our field who are powering creativity. I'm Aaron Dworkin, and this is Arts Engines. Thanks again for joining me here on Arts Engines. Today's guest is Karen Ewald, who serves as Executive Director of the Hawaii State Foundation on Culture and the Arts. Karen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, it's so exciting to have you on the show. I think not just I am not alone. I think our entire audience is with me on, wanting to learn a little more about the cultural landscape in Hawaii and also just kind of thinking about your leadership there and especially with some of the things and the challenges that the state has faced. And all these issues, right? We have all of our states have state arts agencies. And so the National Association of State Arts Agency is our wonderful co-curator for this episode, one of our creative partners. So I thought I would just kick it off by asking kind of what is the kind of landscape there? What's kind of the breadth of arts and culture in Hawaii?
I think that's a really great question. The state of Hawaii it's really embedded throughout the entire state, culture and arts, because the Hawaiians and the indigenous culture here, it informs a lot of the work that's being done in the state. So we have like over 90 arts and culture orgs that are on every island here. They're very strong, and we're a very connected community. So it's a strong landscape of arts and culture orgs, a really vocal community, and I always look to them to kind of inform what work we need to do in the future.
Awesome. And is there kind of a sense, I feel like there's a cult, like if you have a particular state, sometimes there's a culture to that state. And I have a sense, but curious, of course, from your perspective and me kind of, looking from the outside, especially us, coming out from Michigan, that there's a sense of connectivity almost maybe to land or culture that in some ways might be unique in Hawaii. Is that the case, or could you kind of share with us about that?
Yeah, it definitely is. And the one unique, of course, Michigan has incredible culture as well, and every state does for that matter. But the one that it's very unique here, where it's extremely diverse in cultures. The Native Hawaiian culture is still very strong and very informed, but we have we have just a melting pot of different kinds of cultures that actually inform each other and grow upon each other. So it's really wonderful to have that kind of robust um, culture here, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think it projects beyond the state. And so kind of also talking about unique, sometimes states experience unique challenges and sometimes trauma and emergencies, those types of things. And obviously that occurred with the fires
Mhm.
in Hawaii. And what I was wondering if you could kind of share with us is thinking in your role, leading, right, kind of the umbrella for all of the arts for the state. What did that look like? How did you approach that? Because there are so many who are watching who are in leadership roles of arts in their states. And so curious, kind of, how did you approach that? How were you looking at kind of, this leadership when there is a crisis?
Yeah, that's a great question. With what happened with the Maui wildfires with Lahaina, basically, and we do this with everything that it's really the mantra that I hold and that, I the State Foundation continues to have the executive director carry, which is really just going into the community and asking them what they need. Not necessarily letting them know, okay, this is what we have, this is what we can do for you, but actually just opening up the conversation and finding out what the needs are. Obviously, when it happened, um, you know, we had to be careful in coming in and asking the questions when such trauma was happening immediately, right? this was a major disaster, and there was just a lot going on that we knew that we needed to be a part of, but we didn't know how necessarily. So what we did do, we're fortunate with the State Foundation that we have such an incredible staff. And so our arts education specialist, Danica Rosengren, she actually went to speak with the Department of Health. And we didn't have any general funds to be able to give to do work, but with the help from the Department of Health, and with her coordinating with the folks on Maui, the arts and culture orgs on Maui, we were able to partner with them and actually deploy teaching artists and trauma-informed teaching artists into the hotels where the displaced families were, and just do basic trauma-informed work with them. And it's different doing that kind of work as opposed to doing work in the schools. You have to be really mindful of people's trauma and meet them where they're at. So and then moving forward, what we're doing is just also just having meetings with stakeholders there, finding out what they need, seeing how best we can keep. We do have some funds now where we're able to work with organizations there that will then tell us what the needs are in Lahaina, for them to grow and do arts and healing work. So it's been a really humbling and fulfilling thing for us. And I think that just the other thing is like we look at disasters now of we want to make sure that we're more prepared if this happens again. But really, the general disaster right now that we're looking at is the threat of federal funding across the board, and we're actually looking at that as a potential disaster. So we're finding out how to respond to that and how to ensure that the arts community is supported. So.
No, I mean, thank you for sharing all of that, and especially kind of the tie-in in that disasters can be natural disasters, they can be economic disasters, they can come from many sources, and kind of looking at that and how you approach that. I also like kind of especially thinking about utilizing the arts in a way that isn't necessarily just enriching or informing, but is healing when there is a disaster. When you do that type of work, especially relating to the natural disasters and the fires,
Yeah.
was did collaboration take a piece of that? Maybe even collaborating with entities atypical, or what did that look like as you think about kind of disaster relief?
Yeah, that's a really good point. It was an atypical entity that we worked with being the Department of Health. We're finding that we need to um, we need to do more of that. We need to reach out to other departments, whether there's a disaster or not, in order to be able to respond and then see how best we can lift each other up. Um, so yeah, thankfully, because we are the state arts agency, we do have and we have such incredible employees here. We do have our connections, so we're able to really just like immediately connect when something happens with Maui Arts and Culture Center, um, Maui Academy of Performing Arts, MAPA. So we're really fortunate that we have partners like that. But it was really wonderful to be able to work with the Department of Health and utilize. It was actually their mental health fund, their suicide prevention fund, that they were able to utilize because there were a lot of folks that were suffering mentally after the fire, if you could only imagine, losing everything. So looking beyond that, we're also looking at we're having conversations with Children's Action Network and the Office of Elections, just to see what we can do to embed arts and culture into the work that they do. So
It's,
Yeah,
well, it's
great.
beautiful, amazing work, and so important. And of course, love the tie into now kind of, oh, are there any, potential impending disasters for the arts and how are we preparing? And I'm sure that
Yeah,
leadership is going to be key moving forward.
yeah.
As you think about that, and as you kind of think about some of these, sometimes what seem to be almost insurmountable challenges, just wondering if you could share, with our audience, is there any approach that you have or mechanism you use to kind of overcome challenge to when times seem like they're the toughest and or how am I finding the light at the end of the tunnel, any
Yeah.
approaches that you use as an arts leader?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think that I need to, I'm constantly checking in with my other executive director friends across the nation. And I think there's two things. One is definitely self-care. Everybody needs to ensure that they do that, and that's something that I look towards doing all the time, just looking inward and making sure that I'm a whole person. But then also, right now we're having a pretty major issue of threat of our funding from this on the state level, and it's really hard. I mean, this job that I do is extremely difficult, especially when this kind of stuff happens. And really, it's just talking to people, talking to the community, just reaching out to everybody, getting their input. I feel like I mean, I know I can't do this position without the community, without knowing that I can reach out to them, get their support, get their critique, So I really think when things are really, really challenging, you just got to reach out to people. And then also like, make sure you sleep.
Karen Ewald, you truly are one of the arts engines who is powering human creativity in our world. Thank you so much for everything you do, especially in times of crisis. And thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Erin. I appreciate you. Thank you.